Welcome to the Raj Show, a knowledge series designed to empower women in HR. This initiative, in collaboration with Women in HR and Sakkhi, brings together industry leaders to share their experience and insights. I'm your host, and today we have exceptional guest Nanda Rackanchath, who will be sharing his thoughts on crafting your career growth. Let me introduce and welcome Nanda to our show, and thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge to the woman who wants to come up in their career. Let me introduce Mr. Nanda has nearly 4 decades of rich experience across diverse sectors, including manufacturing, trading, retail, consumer durables, FMCG, telecom, and service. He has held key HR leadership roles in prestigious organizations like Murugappa Group, OTE Group, Amara Raja Group, Landmark Group, and the Tata Group. As Senior Vice President and CHRO at Tata Communications and later CHRO at Tata Chemicals, he led global teams, spearheaded HR innovations, and as Senior Vice President and CHRO at Tata Communications and later CHRO at Tata Chemicals. He led global teams, spearheaded HR innovations, and played a crucial role in corporate governance, business ethics, and CSR. Currently based in Bangalore, he serves as an independent director on a mobile based specialty chemicals company board and advises organizations in HR, business ethics, and CSR. Nanda, welcome to the Raj Show. We are honored to have you with us today. Today, Nanda will be sharing his insights on what career growth truly means, how HR professionals can build strong foundations for success, and the key skills that differentiate top leaders. He will also talk about the importance of cross functional expertise, mentorship, and staying adaptable in an ever evolving industry. He will provide practical strategies for breaking career stagnation, communicating value effectively, and positioning everyone for leadership roles. Additionally, he will be highlighting some of the biggest challenges HR professionals face today and how they can navigate them to achieve long term success. The stage is all yours, Mr. Nanda.
Yeah, thank you, Raj Lakshmi, and listening to this podcast and in due course. It's a great honor to be part of a fraternity which I think truly represents a very important dimension of the corporate world in terms of building talent for the future. I would say that my experience in the HR field has been very wide and across various segments of the way the industry has evolved. I still remember when I started my career, everything was pen and paper. There was no automation, no computers, nothing. And today, it's reached a stage where I don't think anybody can live without even a mobile phone or a desktop or a laptop with them. So that's the way life has evolved. But I wanted to primarily talk a few things in generic and then get into a little more specific stuff, which would help people in their careers. And I'm going to structure this in fairly informal, and I would be happy to address any questions that may be there. Even if the questions strike you later, you are most welcome to reach out to me. You can email me at connectnanda@outlook.com, and I will I'll certainly make sure that I respond to you with whatever I think is my views on the particular topic or query that you would have raised. But to begin with, I think I always hold the fundamental belief that while I have had the opportunity, I would say that while HR has been my mainstay across these 4 decades that I've been in the corporate world, I've always been responsible for human resources in some form or the other, starting from being at a plant level to heading a division, to heading a company, then heading a group. But I think, what has been of a great advantage to me is actually the opportunity to do roles beyond HR. And I think that's a very important element that I would say has shaped my own thinking and my capabilities, because I believe that any person in HR must consciously spend a little bit of time doing a non-HR role, and then ability to actually understand what actually happens becomes extremely useful, and it is something which will help the person also calibrate themselves in terms of their skills and capabilities. And I can tell you that it is not rocket science at all. I've handled roles like in manufacturing, in procurement, in traded business, which was completely chalk and cheese from what core HR is. But I think what I brought into those roles were some of the principles by which you can manage teams and people. And I think that's something which you get as the advantage of being in HR. And across the organization that I worked, I always used to tell my teams that HR probably is the only function in the organization which has a legitimate right to get into any other function. Because if you're in finance, you will be in finance. If you're in marketing, you will be in marketing. And if you're in manufacturing, you'll be in manufacturing. But HR is one that deals with people. And as long as organizations are made of people, HR has a legitimate right to get into any function and make sure that that function does well. People are supported in doing a great job and building the talent pipeline for the future. So that's a very important element that we have to keep in mind. So I would say that one has to look at, when you start your career, broadly keep it as three broad phases. So what I mean as a first phase is that don't worry about what you're asked to do in the first phase. You must expose yourself to as many dimensions of HR as possible. It may be an area that you don't prefer to do or not to your liking, but don't shy away from doing it. The more wider you're able to, add value to what you're doing, and the more different types of experiences that you get. And when I say different experiences, I just don't mean only in one, industry or thing. Even in your first thing, if you happen to be in a group which has multi businesses, be in HR roles in multiple businesses. Get a flair of what each of these challenges in each of these things has or presents, and see what you can do to make it easier and better. The second phase, and normally I would say that anywhere between 7 to 12 year becomes every phase that I'm talking about. So in your second phase, you must start leading people in terms of making sure that they're doing their job very effectively by removing all bottlenecks. So let's say you're in charge of recruitment, or you may in charge of, let's say, training and development, or in charge of even, let's say, something like as mundane as payroll. There'll be a lot of stuff that can be done in terms of making sure it is simple. It addresses the problem that is being faced by your stakeholders or constituents, and you're always seen as being as a sounding board. And I think if you can able to reach a stage where in your second phase, where people come to you, knowing fully well that you're not somebody who shoos you away with giving you a different set of problems, but actually gives you a different dimension of finding solutions, you will become a magnet that will attract people to come to you, and then find that there is much more meaningful conversation that happen. In the third phase, which is probably by the time you're about, close to about 15, 20 years of your service, you have to start building the talent pipeline for the future. So, which means, it is not what you do, but how do you create a team that is much better, has far greater capabilities and skills, and can deliver for the tomorrow's organization, not for today. Today is what you will be doing. But can you create an organization that deliver for tomorrow? That becomes a very, very important element to look at in terms of what you need to be creating in your three phases of your career. The first and important thing, especially since we're talking about women entering the HR field, and I've had the opportunity to work with some brilliant people in my team. Some of them have been absolutely, I would say, masterclass in terms of the ability to take ownership and perform. But I would always say that, the most important element of your learning comes when you start doing things you thought you were not capable of doing. And most of us, we shy away from doing it. We think, it is probably something, why should I burn my fingers on this, or will I be able to be successful? I can tell you, when I was given a manufacturing role, I had no experience in manufacturing prior to that. But I remember my CEO called me and said, manufacturing is a very critical element for this company. And we want you to be anchoring this because we believe that we are going through a transformation. So I told him only one thing. I said, I'm not sure whether I may spend 3, 5 years in this role. I'm not sure whether I will be a great manufacturing guy at the end of it. But I promised him one thing. I said, I will make sure that I leave behind a truly great manufacturing organization. And that is what I can promise you because my skills in HR is what I will deploy here. And I can tell you when I moved into this role, I had plant managers reporting into me. Some of them who had spent 25, 30 years as core manufacturing guys. So there is very limited knowledge that I could give them from a functional point of view. But how do I leverage that strength that they had and make sure that we were able to deliver as a manufacturing function? That is the HR expertise that I brought into that role. And therefore, at the end of it, we actually had created a sort of, I would say, a feeling in the organization that this manufacturing team is truly world class. They can meet any challenges. They will not be plant specific. They will be function specific. Manufacturing as a whole will deliver. That is the feeling that you can create. So I think it's very important sometimes for us to test our own boundaries, play from our areas of strength, and look at, don't worry about areas that you don't know. You will learn. It may take you, 3 weeks, 3 months, 30 weeks to learn. That's immaterial. As long as you apply your mind to it, you will certainly learn and how it has to be applied. So that's the first lesson that I want to give. How do you get out of your comfort zone to take on roles that you've never handled? The second and most important, I think this is a challenge that most women, when they get into organizations, have is this managing this work-life balance. There are pressures at home, family, work. How do you create this ecosystem that makes sure that work is done at the same time you are available where there are critical issues or events in your family or in your extended family that requires your presence? The first and foremost thing which I've always found is that plan for it. Don't assume that you will reach the stage and then you will find an answerable a miracle solution that will help you to navigate it. So important thing is plan for such things and make sure that whatever time works for you, reach out to your particular reporting managers and share with them. This is the constraint that I have. I will deal with this issue, but I will make sure this work gets done. And this will be the nature in which I will be able to complete my task which is given. I always had somebody who was to report to me. I would suddenly find that at close to midnight, 1 a.m., she would be responding to emails. And next day I would ask her, don't you think it is time for you to go and sleep? Why are you responding to email? And she tells me, no, when I go back home or when I'm at home, till my kids go to bed, I don't touch work at all. Because I know that once I touch, I will just not be able to do it. Whereas this is the time I am completely undisturbed. I can devote my 100%, and I know it is not essential. I can do it even tomorrow, but I am actually available at that time to deal with these things, and I find it the most productive time for me. That I'm able to get all of this done, and I can finish it and go. And that's a very important element to adjust yourself in terms of how you can get the best out of both. So really, I think women should not hesitate to seek help when they're faced with challenges on the family front or the home front, and make sure that their reporting manager, their teams are also aware of what they're going through, so that the rest of the team will almost chip in when required and make sure that the whatever as the delivery of the function to the stakeholders is not impacted. I think that's a very important element that one needs to keep in mind. The third message I want to give clearly for aspiring people in the HR function is that you can't be a pessimist in HR. If by nature you're a pessimist, choose some other role. Don't be in HR. There are enough other roles where you can continue to be a pessimist and work there. In HR, I think one of the most critical elements that will guide your success is die-hard optimism. However complicated the stuff may look, however you find no answers when you look at it. If you're an optimist, you will find answers. If you're a pessimist, you'll find more reasons why things will not work. And I think that's a very important, I would say, personal attribute that every HR person should have in terms of looking at some of these issues, because that is the way in which you have to make sure that however complicated, you insulate your team, you insulate your stakeholders from that but to the external world, you give a face of being said, we will find an answer, we will get this matter solved. That optimism is what will help you find solutions and make you go forward. The last message which I want to give for aspiring and people who are in the HR function is that there is nothing known as the copy paste. It is very different. If you're following financial statements, you're following certain marketing plan, you're following certain production process, the same will work irrespective of country, irrespective of regional intricacies. There's no major difficulty. But HR is not like that. A perfect solution that works in a company A in a country is not going to be perfect when you copy paste and apply it to some other region or some other part of your business. It has to be contextualized to that particular situation. And if you don't, do this right the first way, you will think, why I was so successful in doing this elsewhere? Why am I not able to get the same success here? The fact is, you're dealing with a live ecosystem of people, and people are so dynamic in their thinking, in the sort of aspiration that they have, the sort of pressures under which they come into work are very, very different country to country, region to region. And there's no question of copy paste. You have to contextualize it for the particular segment in which you're trying to work for. So I would say these are the three or four broad things which I think is extremely critical and essential for anybody who is part of the HR function, more so for women. And at least the good thing that we are seeing over the last, I would say, couple of decades is a large number of women are getting into the HR function, but they predominantly are still being more at the corporate and still looking at certain functions which are like training and development, leadership, building, those sort of areas where they're looking at. I think it's definitely a requirement to have more women get into frontline HR roles, whether it is in the plant or in the sales organization or anywhere else, handle some of the issues which are frontline, and then start building capability for themselves in terms of managing overall strategic HR functions for a medium to large organization. And that's something which I think is very, very important for us to see. At least we have had an experience where any person who joins HR fresh, we say the first 3 years, the person has to be in a plant. Even though the person may have a desire to be in a corporate, we say, no, you have to first groom yourself in a plant and then come back and handle a corporate role, because then you will understand what it means. And I'm sure it is the same for most organizations. Wherever your largest workforce segment is, that is where you have to be on the front line to cut your teeth. After which, when you get into corporate or get into corporate roles, you will appreciate and understand what needs to be done so that it really meets the needs of the your particular largest stakeholder groups that you're meant to be servicing. So this is all that I thought I will give as an overall overview of what I think can be done, but happy to address any specific questions that you would have.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and sharing a knowledgeable session. I have a few questions, around four. And my first question is, what are the three actionable tips that HR professionals can implement right away to fast track their career growth?
See, I think let's put it as ABC. I think first is build awareness. And when I say build awareness, what I really talk about is that, are you aware of what you're doing in your function that is contributing to organizational success? I think that's the first important thing you should do. And it will be different for different organizations and different workforce segments. But you must be able to pick those two or three things that will make a critical difference in terms of organizational success. The B is making sure it is done helping changing behaviors. See, HR is not about rules and policies. Those you can document and you can create. But can you really make sure that people's behaviors start changing? What are you doing in terms of creating a ecosystem which is completely tuned towards ensuring that people do it because they know it's important. They are not doing it because somebody is telling them that to do that, or there's a rule which is displayed on a notice board saying if you don't do this, this is how you will get penalized. Not because of that. It is core and changing the behavior. The third element, which I think is very clear, is that be consistent. And when I say consistent, it is sometimes you will find enough reasons to drop what you are planned to do because it is not successful, it is not succeeding. But HR is one thing where you will never hit success as you start stuff. I mean, if it happens, well and good. You're really lucky to have that sort of a scenario. So if you hit failure in your first attempt, don't abandon stuff. It
Right.
can be, it can be a new performance management, a new succession planning. All of this takes time to internalize and grow in the organization. And nothing will happen with a magical wand in the very first cycle. Minimum is going to take you at least 6 months aligning. So if you give up, then you have lost the battle. So you have to be consistent, making sure you have done homework right, you've understood all the areas which are need to be addressed, and you will do it consistently over a period of time to make sure it gets institutionalized. I think these are three things which I think I would say are very, very critical and important.
There is always saying that failure is the learning to the
Yes.
success. That is. My next question is, how can professionals build a strong personal brand that sets them apart in the HR field?
Yeah, well, what I'm saying may not be specific only to HR. I think it applies to any function that you are in.
Correct.
See, you are ultimately your own brand ambassador. So the way you project yourself starts at three levels. One is how do you project yourself within your organization, within your team, within your leadership? That's your first layer. The second layer in which you project yourself is how do you project yourself in the industry in which you operate? So let's say you're in the automotive
Hmm.
industry or the financial services and in the HR. Are you seen as being somebody of who has got thought leadership in that particular industry? So that becomes the second layer. The third is how do you broad base your knowledge by aligning yourself with industry and trade associations. And this can be through a combination of stuff. It can be on committees that you work in these organizations, by your social media presence or interaction that you do. It can be any form, and it can be LinkedIn or in Twitter or wherever it is. But you have to make sure it is not done flippantly. And I always, tell people because of my exposure with the communications field also earlier is that when any when any person or brand or organization starts something to do on the communication space, make sure you have enough in your mind that can occupy for at least 6 months. Otherwise, you do something today, and for the next 6 months there is silence. People forget you. They don't even when you come back with something better, they don't associate that you're built on something that you said earlier. So it's very important if you're looking at building your brand using social media, have a thought out approach. It need not be 100% fitting in, but at least 80% should match in terms of what you intend to do and how you do it. So I would say these are the three layers that you should look at in terms of building your own brand. First is within your team, your leadership, your organization in which you handle. Second is in the industry in which you operate. And third is at the using the networking of the professional bodies and the trade associations. I think these are three that are eminently available. Nothing is restricted now. In fact, everybody has access to all these three depending on how much they want to use of it. So it's really a question of how much effort you want to put yourself to make sure you're able to leverage these which are available to you. And the more you do, the better for you. But be thoughtful, be mindful. Don't get into controversies that can derail you or can make you appear in a different way than what you intended to be. These are things that you should actually think twice before you get into. But once you do it, the canvas is almost limitless.
Oh, my next question is, if you could give one piece of career advice to your young self.
I would say I think not understanding the business implications
Hmm.
and learning it much later is probably a handicap. If today I would say that if you are able to know the nuances of what works in your business, what are the levers that are very critical in your business, it would have been a great help. Everything I didn't probably do it enough in my first a few years. I was more focused on being a good HR guy, not really a good person who understood what ticks in business. I think this is something which I think is very, very important. And it is very simple things. I remember the struggles that we had in terms of how to read and interpret a balance sheet, or how to read and interpret certain research papers or studies. These are all been extremely useful in terms of if you have picked up those skills at the right time. And I think today there is great opportunity. There is enough learning tools available at everyone's disposal, which we did not have when we started off. We were all dependent on somebody spending time with us and explaining to us. There were no self-made tutorials in those days. But I think that's something which I would have really benefited from had I done it earlier.
Nanda, thank you for sharing your experiences and wisdom on crafting your career growth. Your journey and insights will undoubtedly inspire many professionals in the HR community. To all our listeners, career growth is a continuous journey of learning, adaptability, and perseverance. Stay proactive, invest in your skills, and build strong professional relationships. Stay connected with the Raj Show and the Women in HR for more insightful conversations. Until next time, keep growing and keep leading. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
sir,
you. Thank you
for
very much. It was
yeah,
nice to have this conversation. And as I mentioned earlier, if anybody has any queries, do reach out to me.
sure.
You
I
can
will keep
email
my
me at
email.
connectnanda at outlook.com, and I'm happy to address them to the best of my ability. Thank you very much once again.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.